Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MetrObelisk Radio. Today we are going to be looking at the second season of Survivor, the Australian Outback. Now, it's known that I really liked Borneo, so the question being for this retrospective is how good is this season compared not only to Borneo, but to the rest of the series? Now, before we begin, I would like to announce that MetrObelisk Radio now has an official blog. You can go to www.metrobeliskradio.blogspot.com to find the corresponding write-up for this episode and even the PDF version of my presentation files if you wish to download them. The link to the blog and the various social medias to follow me on are all linked in the description of this video and attached to every blog post. So now, let's dive right into Survivor the Australian Outback. To kick off this retrospective, let's first discuss the location. I really didn't like the location of the Outback for a couple of reasons. The first reason being that the beaches were the exact same before the shelters were built. I'm talking about both the Kucha and the Ogakor Beach. I understand that they needed to be put right on the water because the creek was the only water source that they had, but as a result, there's no location diversity here. To go from Borneo to the Australian Outback is a stark difference and one that can be very jarring at times because you go from lush jungles to a couple of creek beds and a little bit of a forest behind that. And the Merge Beach was no better either. I felt that the castaways really got screwed here primarily because of the wet season at the time. There was no way for any of them to know how bad the Outback gets during this time unless they're familiar with the area. By the time they realize they need to move, they are so low on energy due to malnourishment. They basically dug their own grave, and I feel that some of the blame is on the castaways for building their shelter in that dry riverbed. But guess what happened? Too low on energy? Couldn't move the entire camp? Entire camp gets washed away about a day or two later. This could have been resolved had production handled this like Borneo, where they decide which beach to move to, in this case the Ogakor Beach or the Kucha Beach. I understand why they wanted to move the Merge tribe to a neutral location, but with the weather of the Outback, it could have been better to go with one of the two starter beaches because not only was the infrastructure built up to this point, you had people that were already familiar with the land. And the final part I want to bring up within the location is the tribal council area. I feel that this was really a wasted opportunity. Production made a big deal that it was built on top of this granite waterfall and it made for a nice view. The problem with this is that the tribal councils are typically all at night. So you can't see the waterfall when they're walking into the tribal council area. And honestly, I wouldn't even make this a big deal had production not made a big deal about being on top of a granite waterfall. Because all we can really see is basically just the Stonehenge behind the various castaways. So my overall score for location for the season is 4 out of 10. The next area that I'm going to focus on is the challenges from this season. Now, in my opinion, the challenges were very dull this season. This is the first season to actually have the challenge where one person is on top of the crow's nest and calling out directions to grab items to the other tribe members who are blindfolded. Some challenges like the survival trivia contest is back this season, but instead of being individual reward, it's a tribal immunity challenge. And the fallen comrades were ripped straight out of Borneo. That's fine, but the challenges need to be improved upon. There was one challenge specifically in Borneo where Jeff shared a story about a tradition in Borneo, and the castaways had to run around with a video camera, pick up the masks, and answer the questions on them correctly, basically calling it Survivor Blair Witch. There was a similar challenge here where there was a story and all of the castaways were shackled and had to get the answers correctly to unlock the shackles. I believe that this challenge was far better executed in Borneo just given the way it was shot. I really can't remember one challenge from the season that I really like to watch. To me, the challenges that were ripped from Borneo were better executed in Borneo, and the new ones like building a fire in one bucket and using it to fill the water and using the water to fill the other so the fire lights a fuse was just really boring to watch. It was really uneventful. There are much better seasons of Survivor in terms of just the challenges. I believe that the challenges have degraded in quality over time because of those future seasons. At the time, the sentiment may have been different, but this is 2020, not 2001. So my overall score for the challenges now is a 1 out of 10. Now we get to the fun part of this retrospective, and that is the actual cast assessment. The only people on the cast that I really didn't mind this season were Roger, Elizabeth, Tina, Jeff Varner, and Mike Skupin. Yes, this is the season where the guy fell into the fire. That was Mike Skupin. I don't mind that Tina won the game against Colby Donaldson, but a point that I want to make regarding the guy falling into the fire, this is the first season to show that Survivor does have an element of luck involved, because now you can play a what-if game. What if Mike Skupin didn't fall into the fire? Would they win the final tribal immunity, putting Kucha Tribe up 6-4 come the merge? Or would they lose the challenge and have it remain 5 Kucha and 5 Ogakor going into the merge? Could Mike Skupin have won the game? No one really knows. Now, I do believe that Colby Donaldson as a castaway is overrated by today's standards. People like Ozzy from the Cook Islands and Malcolm from the Philippines fill the role a lot better on the show. It was not a controversial opinion 10 years ago to say that Colby was one of the best, but now that some time has passed and more people have come and played the game, not so much. This is also the first season with Jerry Manthe. Again, 10 years ago, it wasn't a controversial opinion to put her up with the most notorious villains of the game. Now, that opinion has changed since players like Russell Hantz from Samoa, Tony from Cagayan, Parvati from Micronesia, and Corinne from Gabon have all essentially come along and filled that role of the villain a lot better. Everyone else on the cast is just kind of there. Again, over time, the cast of the season has gotten weaker. Out of everybody that I personally know that raves about this season, the cast is not usually praised, and for good reason. Simply put it, the best players went before the final tribal council. So, with the exception of 4 individuals, that'd be Varner, Elizabeth, Roger, and Mike, this is one of the weakest casts by modern standards. So my overall score for this is a 3 out of 10. Now, the last category to talk about before giving my final overall score is what is the rewatch value of the Australian Outback? And in my opinion, time has not been too kind to the season, whether it comes to challenges being very rudimentary or the cast not aging well by modern standards. I am sticking by the fact that the game in this time period, even after Borneo, was a lot harder because there were no modern advantages like hidden immunity idols and vote steals, so everyone had to rely on their social bonds to get them through this game. Now, me personally, it was also just very frustrating for me to watch Colby piss away his chances at winning the game. I'm not the only one to say this over the years, by the way, but had Colby taken Keith to the final 2 instead of Tina, Colby wins the game. After this season, he had no other chance to win the game. He didn't even make the jury in All-Stars, and he placed 5th in Heroes vs. Villains. Now, he can come out and say that it takes a lot more to win the game than just winning rewards and immunities, and he's correct on that, but he cannot ignore that he simply pissed away his chances at ever winning this game. So my overall score for the rewatch value of Survivor the Australian Outback is a 1 out of 10. So what is my final overall score for Survivor the Australian Outback? Well, after the math, which you can view on my presentation files, the final overall score comes out to a 2.2 out of 10. If you want to watch Survivor, I would recommend a lot of other seasons before ever recommending the Australian Outback. Like I've stated throughout this retrospective, time has not been the kindest to it. I think the biggest enemy that Survivor the Australian Outback faced was Survivor itself. It did get better beyond this point. Now, I understand that this was popular at the time with an average of 30 million viewers per episode, but just because something is popular at the time doesn't mean that it will stand the test of time.